In April of 2024, fitness influencer Joey Swole faced a terrifying near-death experience during what was supposed to be a routine 30-minute heart test. While undergoing an angiogram, a piece of medical equipment broke off inside his heart, causing him to crash mid-procedure. Doctors had to perform a 6-hour emergency surgery to remove the foreign object and stabilize him, even resorting to implanting a heart pump to keep him alive. The lead surgeon described the situation as unprecedented and miraculous, saying Joey came dangerously close to dying on the table. Here's a terrifying video of a diver encountering a candiru fish and clenching his knees for good reason. These spiny parasitic fish have been rumored to swim up human urethras, latching on with barbed spines and requiring extremely painful surgery to remove. While dissecting the donated body of a 78-year-old man, medical students were stunned to find he had not one, not two, but 3 tallywhackers. The 2 extras were tiny, tucked-away trouser snakes hiding deep in his beanbag. But since they were completely hidden and non-functional, there's a good chance the guy went his whole life unaware he was packing a secret sausage trio. There were countless serious warning signs leading up to the implosion of the OceanGate Titan submersible. Experts repeatedly flagged the vessel's experimental design, particularly its carbon fiber hull, which is prone to microscopic weaknesses under deep-sea pressure. Former OceanGate employees raised alarms about structural integrity, previous dive malfunctions, the fact that the sub's navigation system relied on a modded Xbox controller, and over 100 documented equipment issues, including a 2022 incident where passengers heard alarming cracking sounds as the pressure increased. But despite this, OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush pushed forward, publicly dismissing regulation as a barrier to innovation. In fact, the warning signs were so clearly numerous that after the implosion, many have speculated that Rush may have even had suicidal intentions, citing his repeated disregard for safety warnings and his presence on board during the fatal dive, though no evidence has officially confirmed this theory. During a pro wrestling tag team match in 2015, Rey Mysterio delivered a routine dropkick intended to set up his signature 619 move against Perro Aguayo Jr., but Aguayo slumped lifelessly onto the ropes. Unbeknownst to everyone at first, Aguayo had suffered a fatal cervical spine injury, likely caused by the whiplash to his neck from the dropkick. The match eerily continued on for several minutes before anyone realized that something was seriously wrong. Aguayo was soon rushed to the hospital, but was pronounced dead shortly afterwards. The cause of death was later determined to be cardiac arrest, due to a cervical stroke caused by 3 fractured vertebrae. The coroner stated that the fractures took place at 2 different moments of impact and that Aguayo died almost immediately. Although Mysterio bore no blame, the incident left him devastated since Aguayo had been his longtime friend. It remains one of the only times a pro wrestler died during a match from in-ring trauma. In 2015, Selena Gomez was diagnosed with lupus, an autoimmune disease that began attacking her kidneys and led to life-threatening complications. By 2017, her condition had worsened to the point where she required a kidney transplant to survive. Her close friend Francia Raisa volunteered to donate one without Selena even asking, and while the transplant initially appeared to be successful, Gomez suffered a serious complication when the new kidney twisted inside her body, cutting off blood flow. Doctors had to perform emergency surgery, using a vein from her leg to construct a new artery to save the organ. The experience left her with lasting physical and emotional scars, and although it deepened her bond with Raisa at the time, their relationship later became strained, reportedly because of Selena's drinking habits following the surgery, which Raisa felt was disrespectful to her and even dangerous, considering the seriousness of the surgery and the need to protect the donated organ. 31-year-old physician Dr. Sneha Ann Phillip vanished on September 10, 2001, just one day before the 9/11 attacks. Surveillance footage last showed her shopping at a department store near her Manhattan residence, but she was never seen again. Her family believes she rushed to Ground Zero to help victims and died in the chaos, but there's no official record or eyewitness account placing her there. Investigators also uncovered personal and professional turmoil in her life, leading to speculation that she may have used the disaster to disappear intentionally or was possibly even murdered. Her remains were never found, but in 2008, a judge ruled she likely perished in the attacks, officially adding her to the list of 9/11 victims despite the lack of definitive evidence confirming her death. Aaliyah's song Age Ain't Nothing But a Number was written and produced by R. Kelly, and lyrically centers around a young girl wanting to be with an older man. At the time, R. Kelly was 27 and Aaliyah was just 15. The two secretly and illegally married in 1994 using a falsified ID that listed her age as 18. When her family found out, the marriage was quickly annulled in early 1995. Afterwards, Aaliyah cut all personal and professional ties with R. Kelly and never worked with him again. The song and the marriage later took on a disturbing new light, foreshadowing the predatory behavior that R. Kelly would eventually be exposed and convicted for. In June of 2011, Jackass star Ryan Dunn left a bar in Pennsylvania in his Porsche 911 GT3 after posting a photo of himself drinking just hours earlier. Minutes later, he was dead. The car was obliterated after slamming into a tree at over 130 miles per hour, killing both he and his passenger, newlywed Navy veteran Zachary Hartwell. The wreckage was so violent that the engine flew more than 100 feet from the car, and the impact tore the vehicle into two burning sections. The death was eerily foreshadowed. A year earlier, Dunn played a man killed in a drunken crash in the film Living Will. Friends had joked that his Porsche was a widowmaker that he'd eventually wrap around a tree, and in a 2002 interview, he said he'd probably die in a ridiculous way. The loss sent Bam Margera, Dunn's best friend, into a years-long spiral of alcoholism, depression, and multiple rehab stints, marking the start of his personal decline. The death left the Jackass crew devastated and sparked ongoing debates about drunk driving in the entertainment world. In the 1990s, Belgium was shaken by the horrific case of Marc Dutroux, a convicted predator who, after early release from prison, built a hidden soundproof dungeon beneath his home. In 1995, he kidnapped two 8-year-old girls named Julie and Melissa and locked them inside the chamber. Later that year, he was jailed for several months after stealing a car and left the girls trapped in the basement. Dutroux claimed he told his wife to feed them, but she never did, and the girls slowly starved to death in total darkness. When police finally searched the home 1 year later, they found their bodies buried in the yard along with two more victims, teenage girls that Dutroux had drugged, abused, and murdered. Investigators had previously searched the home but missed the hidden cell, ignoring repeated warnings and reports of screams from neighbors. The public was completely outraged as over 300,000 people marched silently through Brussels in what became known as the White March, Belgium's largest protest since World War II. Dr. Fauci's NIH division, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, funded a series of horrific experiments on beagle puppies between 2016 and 2020. One of the most graphic studies involved dogs placed in mesh cages while sandflies were allowed to bite and feed on their heads, allegedly to study how certain parasites are transmitted in hopes of improving treatments for parasitic infections affecting humans. Some dogs were reportedly devocalized to prevent barking and were euthanized at the end of the studies. While Fauci wasn't personally conducting the tests, his agency approved the funding of about $375,000 for the research. Critics, including lawmakers and animal rights groups, condemned the studies as unnecessarily cruel and accused the NIH of lacking transparency and ethical oversight in approving such horrific procedures. The incident sparked widespread outrage online, with many calling for Dr. Fauci to be held responsible for the funding decisions made under his leadership. In a resurfaced video from 2016, Cardi B casually confessed to drugging and robbing men during her stripping days, luring them to hotel rooms under the guise of sex, then stealing from them once they were unconscious. No victims ever came forward, leading many to believe they were either too ashamed, unaware, or unable to remember what happened. Cardi later defended herself by saying she did what she had to do to survive and that she would do it again without regret. The confession drew widespread outrage in comparisons to infamous cases of sexual exploitation. Yet despite her disturbing admission, no charges were ever filed and her career continues to thrive. In October of 2023, a hunter stumbled upon the remains of a missing man deep in the mountains of Colorado. Lying faithfully beside him was his white Jack Russell Terrier, Finney, having somehow survived the unforgiving wilderness for months, refusing to leave her owner's side. A grieving daughter from the UK placed her mother's ashes in a bottle along with a touching message before throwing it into the ocean. Her mother had passed away from a heart condition at the young age of 51, never having the chance to fulfill her dream of traveling the world. The bottle was soon found by a family who posted the story online before honoring the heartfelt request. In February of 1978, 5 friends from Yuba City, California, all with mild mental disabilities or psychiatric conditions, went to watch a college basketball game in Chico and never returned home. The next day, their Mercury Montego was found abandoned on a remote snowy mountain road in the Plumas National Forest. The car wasn't stuck by any means. It was perfectly drivable, had a quarter tank of gas, and showed no signs of mechanical trouble. The keys were gone, and it was parked as if someone expected to come back. It wasn't until 4 months later when melting snow finally revealed the first few bodies. 3 of the men's corpses were found scattered in the forest between the car and a Forest Service trailer 19 miles away. Inside that trailer laid the 4th man, Ted Weyer, wrapped in sheets and emaciated to just 120 pounds. He had grown a full beard, suggesting he had survived for weeks, but he starved to death surrounded by enough canned food to last all 5 men more than a year. The food had been untouched except for a few open tins, and the propane tank outside had never been used to heat the trailer. The 5th man, Gary Mathias, was simply gone. Only his tennis shoes were found near Weyer's body, implying he had left the trailer completely barefoot in deep snow. No other trace of him has ever been found. Why they abandoned the warm-stocked cabin, why they split up, and why they went up the mountain in the first place in the opposite direction from home all remain a mystery. Some believe they were chased, others think they panicked after a wrong turn, and some suspect Mathias' history of schizophrenia may have played a role. But after nearly 50 years, the case still remains unsolved. Growing up in sunny Burbank, California, Tim Burton often felt out of place, finding comfort and solitude at a cemetery at the end of his street, since it was a lonely and emotional place where no one would bother you. It became a quiet refuge where he could think undisturbed by himself, nurturing an early fascination with the macabre that would later define his unique Gothic style. Burton created the character of Edward Scissorhands to reflect his own feelings of isolation, with the image of a man with scissors for hands symbolizing the pain of wanting to connect with others but being unable to do so without causing harm. Rigor mortis stiffens the muscles after death, but once it wears off, limbs can twitch or shift due to muscle relaxation or gas buildup. These movements can be so startling that morticians have reported bodies appearing to sit up, raise their arms, or even turn their heads. In 1957, 22-year-old rock star Jerry Lee Lewis married his teenage first cousin Myra Gale Brown in Mississippi. At the time, Lewis had still been married to another woman, while Myra Gale was only 13 years old and still believed in Santa Claus. After riding a big wave of success with hits like Great Balls of Fire, the scandalous marriage effectively destroyed Lewis's career. In January of 2024, 29-year-old Nolan Arbaugh became the first human to receive a Neuralink brain implant after being paralyzed in a diving accident. Though the surgery was celebrated as a milestone, things quickly unraveled. 85% of the device's threads retracted from his brain, crippling its function. Neuralink scrambled to deploy emergency software fixes just to keep it working, allowing Nolan to play chess and move a cursor with his thoughts. The surgery carried serious risks including infection, brain damage, and long-term complications. Arbaugh's implant was never removed, and the company hasn't disclosed the full extent of its ongoing effects. In 2017, retired U.S. Army Colonel David Will Riggins was awarded $8.4 million in a defamation lawsuit after a woman publicly accused him of raping her decades earlier when they were cadets at West Point. Just as Riggins was being considered for promotion as Brigadier General, the accusation was posted on a blog, effectively derailing his military career. But an investigation soon found no supporting evidence, and a Virginia jury later determined the woman's claims were provably false. Although the final payout was reduced to around $2.3 million, Riggins said he was grateful to have his name cleared, even if the damage to his career couldn't be undone. Morbid Facts, Part 632. Known for his roles in Weird Science, Titanic, and Twister, in 2017, actor Bill Paxton underwent heart surgery to repair an aortic aneurysm and replace a valve, a procedure that his family later claimed was high-risk, unconventional, and perhaps not even necessary. The surgeon, Dr. Ali Koinazad, had allegedly been warned by the hospital for his poor judgment in past cases, but he still performed the operation. According to the lawsuit, Paxton was never properly informed of the risks involved or the surgeon's history. In the days following the procedure, Paxton initially appeared to be recovering well and even spoke with his family. But without proper monitoring, and with the surgeon having left the hospital, complications soon arose, including internal bleeding, cardiac instability, and worsening organ function. Despite his declining condition, no adequate care was administered in time. Paxton ultimately suffered a massive stroke and died shortly afterwards, in what his family described as a preventable cascade of medical negligence. Pamela Anderson contracted hepatitis C in the 90s after sharing a tattoo needle with her husband Tommy Lee, who never told her he had the deadly virus. Doctors warned her it could kill her within 10 years, and the virus slowly attacked her liver, while she suffered from chronic fatigue, weakness, and bouts of depression. At her lowest, she described feeling like her body was rotting from the inside, as the disease forced her out of the spotlight and into isolation. For over a decade, she lived with the fear of cancer or liver failure, until she was finally cured in 2015 by a breakthrough antiviral treatment. In 2004, 7-year-old Tyler Moon became a walking miracle after a horrific quad crash left both he and his father critically injured in the Australian bush. Despite suffering 2 collapsed lungs filling with blood, 7 broken ribs, and a shattered arm, the boy staggered for nearly a kilometer through dense forest to reach help. When he finally reached his mother's house, he managed to say, "Dad said you should call an ambulance," before collapsing on the ground. Doctors said it was a miracle that Tyler survived at all, let alone saved someone else's life in the process. Creator of Naruto, Masashi Kishimoto, endured a grueling work schedule that pushed him to the brink of physical and emotional collapse. He routinely worked up to 20 hours per day, leading to several hospitalizations, and even missing the birth of his own child due to crushing deadlines. By the final arcs of Naruto, he admitted to feeling emotionally numb, simply trying to survive the demands of the series. Writing certain death scenes took a drastic personal toll on him, and he received constant death threats from fans over controversial plot decisions. Much of his work was inspired by feelings of deep isolation and insecurity, stemming from his youth and the constant comparisons to his twin brother. These personal struggles bled into Naruto's themes of loneliness, rejection, and the desperate need for acknowledgement. In 1992, Pepsi launched a promotion in the Philippines called Number Fever, offering 1 million pesos to anyone with the winning bottle cap number, a life-changing prize for most people in the country at the time. On May 25th, the winning number announced was 349, but due to a printing error, over 600,000 caps with that number had been distributed. Thousands of people thought they had won, only to be told their prizes wouldn't be honored, and chaos quickly ensued. Riots broke out, Pepsi trucks were bombed, and at least 5 people were killed, including a mother and her child, when a grenade was thrown at a delivery truck. Pepsi offered small consolation payments, but the damage was done. The scandal became one of the most infamous marketing disasters in history, and Pepsi never fully regained public trust in the Philippines. Conan O'Brien's world was rocked in 2024 when both of his parents, married for 66 years, died just 3 days apart. His father passed at 95, followed shortly by his mother at 92, leaving Conan to plan 2 funerals back-to-back before rushing overseas to continue filming Conan O'Brien Must Go. Still reeling from the loss, he was then forced to evacuate Los Angeles due to the raging wildfires. Conan later admitted he spent that entire period in a fugue state, emotionally numb and running on autopilot even as he hosted the Oscars. Tasmanian tiger was hunted to extinction after being falsely blamed for killing sheep, despite having jaws far too weak to take down large prey. The last known thylacine Benjamin froze to death while in captivity in 1936, just 2 months after the species finally gained legal protection. Croatian nurse Hedviga Golic died alone in her apartment in 1966 and was left undiscovered for 42 years. Her mummified remains were finally found in 2008 during renovations, after decades of neighbors assuming she'd simply moved away. Her electricity bills were quietly paid by the building's architect until shortly before her body was found. Beloved by millions, Latina singer Selena was on the verge of global superstardom when cracks began to show behind the scenes of her fame. One of her most devoted fans, Yolanda Saldivar, had pushed her way into Selena's inner circle, first as president of her fan club, then as manager of her boutiques. But what began as genuine admiration eventually spiraled into obsession and control. Yolanda grew possessive, isolating Selena from others, and was soon suspected of embezzling money. In March of 1995, Selena met her at a Corpus Christi motel to retrieve crucial financial documents. Backed into a corner and fearing exposure, Yolanda pulled out a revolver and shot Selena in the back as she tried to leave. Selena managed to run nearly 400 feet to the lobby, leaving a trail of blood behind her before collapsing. With her final breath, she named her killer as Yolanda Saldivar, the woman who was once her biggest fan. Morbid Facts, Part 655. In 2020, Tim Bleefnick appeared on Family Feud and joked that the biggest mistake he made at his wedding was saying "I do."
What's the biggest mistake you made at your wedding?
Honey, I love you, but said I do. Not my mistake. Not my mistake. I love my wife.
But 3 years later, in February of 2023, his estranged wife Rebecca Bleefnick was found shot 14 times in their home while their 3 young boys were upstairs. The couple had apparently been going through a bitter divorce, and Tim went to the extreme to deal with it. He was arrested, convicted of first-degree murder, and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. When 36-year-old Heather McManamy was diagnosed with terminal cancer, she began writing dozens of greeting cards for her young daughter to open in the years after she was gone, covering birthdays, graduations, heartbreaks, and even her wedding day. Each card was filled with love, jokes, and advice, allowing her daughter to still receive words of comfort and celebration long after Heather's death in 2015. It was her way of staying present for every milestone she knew she wouldn't live to see. A French woman was scammed out of 830,000 euros after falling for an elaborate scheme involving an AI-generated version of Brad Pitt. It began in 2023 when someone posing as Pitt's mother contacted her online, followed by Brad himself claiming he was battling kidney cancer and desperately needed financial help or else he was gonna die. He sent AI-generated hospital photos showing himself bruised and hooked up to machines. Over time, the woman was manipulated into believing they were in a secret relationship, one he swore had to be kept quiet because of restrictive Hollywood contracts. She even believed they were engaged and that he planned to move to France to marry her. She wired him thousands for fake medical bills and customs fees for luxury gifts that he sent her but never arrived. After her husband divorced her over the delusion, she sent the scammers 775,000 euros she received from the settlement. Despite repeated warnings, she insisted it was true love until she eventually realized she had thrown her entire life away for a fake person. Mexican painter Frida Kahlo's life was a haunting mix of brilliance and suffering. After contracting polio at age 6, classmates called her Frida the Cripple. At 18, she was nearly killed when a steel handrail impaled her during a bus crash, entering through her pelvis and exiting her abdomen. Her spine, pelvis, collarbone, and foot were completely shattered. She endured over 30 brutal surgeries, spent months in body casts, and painted while bedridden. Frida later suffered 5 to 7 miscarriages as a result, with one nearly killing her from blood loss, and she captured the horror in disturbing works like Henry Ford Hospital, showing herself naked, bleeding, and surrounded by a floating fetus and surgical tools. Later on, gangrene took her leg, only deepening her depression. She filled her diary with dark images and wrote, "I am not sick, I am broken." Though officially ruled a pulmonary embolism, many believe she intentionally overdosed at 47. Her final diary entry read, "I hope the exit is joyful, and I hope to never return." In 2003, 28-year-old marine biologist Kirsty Brown became the first known human killed by a leopard seal while she was snorkeling near a research station in Antarctica. Without warning, the seal grabbed her by the head and dragged her beneath the icy water, diving down for several minutes and resurfacing with her body before diving down again several times, eventually pulling her as deep as 230 feet. Her colleagues watched helplessly as the powerful predator treated her like prey, mimicking the way it would typically toy with penguins before drowning them. After holding her underwater for 6 minutes, the seal finally released Kirsty, but despite desperate CPR attempts, she never regained consciousness. In 2012, NYPD officer Gilberto Valle was arrested after his wife discovered he'd been posting on fetish forums about kidnapping, torturing, and eating women, including her. He had detailed abduction plans, photos of real women he said he was targeting, and even searched online for recipes for cooking human meat. The FBI found his chats on a site called Dark Fetish Net, where he discussed taking advantage of his police access to stalk victims. Though convicted in 2013 for conspiracy to kidnap, his conviction was later overturned when a judge ruled the evidence was insufficient to prove intent, calling the chats fantasy roleplay. An appeals court upheld the acquittal, stating that while disturbing, his actions were protected under the First Amendment. Joey Jordison was the founding drummer of Slipknot and one of the most influential figures in modern metal, known for his blistering speed, chaotic precision, and aggressive stage presence. He was instrumental in writing much of the band's early music and helped define their sound during their rise to fame. But in 2013, fans were shocked when he was suddenly fired from the band without explanation. Years later, Jordison revealed he had been silently battling transverse myelitis, a rare neurological disorder that left him temporarily unable to walk or play drums. Despite recovering and launching new projects, he never returned to Slipknot. On July 26, 2021, Jordison died in his sleep at just 46 years old, and no official cause of death was ever made public. In July of 2025, 44-year-old Thawisak Namwangsa was found dead in his bedroom after reportedly surviving for nearly a month on nothing but beer. Over 100 empty bottles surrounded his body, forming a narrow path to his bed. He had refused food and water following a bitter divorce, and is believed to have suffered a fatal seizure before paramedics could reach him. Cop killer Donald Eugene Webb was on the FBI's most wanted list for more than 25 years, longer than anyone else at the time, and was never captured. It was later discovered that his wife had been hiding him inside a secret room in her home for nearly 2 decades and buried him in her backyard after he died from a stroke. In August of 1993, 4-year-old Derek Roby had been walking alone to summer camp when 13-year-old Eric Smith lured him into the woods under the guise of showing him a new shortcut. Once they were out of sight, Smith strangled Derek until he was unconscious, brutally smashed his head with a large rock, then poured Kool-Aid into the boy's wounds. Before fleeing the scene, Smith removed one of Derek's shoes and scattered the contents of his lunchbox all around him, creating a disturbing and almost ritualistic display that baffled investigators. The child's body was found later that day, just yards from the park he never made it to. Smith later confessed and was tried as an adult despite his young age, receiving 9 years to life in prison. He was denied parole 10 times over the years, with Derek's family attending each hearing to oppose his release. After 27 years behind bars, Smith was finally granted parole in 2022, sparking debates about whether someone capable of such violence at 13 can ever truly be reformed. In 2019, 18-year-old Denali Bremer from Alaska was messaged by a wealthy tycoon named Tyler, who promised her $9 million if she murdered someone and sent him the proof. Convinced the offer was real, Bremer recruited several friends whom she told she would split the money with, and they chose to target 19-year-old Cynthia Hoffman, a developmentally disabled girl who considered Bremer her best friend. The group lured Cynthia on a fake hiking trip to Thunderbird Falls, where they bound her with duct tape and led her to a remote spot. That's when one of the friends shot her in the back of the head while Bremer filmed the murder and sent the footage to Tyler, after which they dumped the body in the river. Authorities uncovered the plot through digital evidence, leading to multiple arrests. Tyler ended up being an unemployed catfisher named Darren Schillmiller who lived in his parents' basement in Indiana. He was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 99 years in prison, the same sentence handed to Bremer. Shockingly, just a year later in 1998, Owen Hart botched another piledriver, this time on Dan Severn during a live episode of Raw, causing another serious neck injury that briefly left Severn unable to move. The back-to-back incidents helped solidify the piledriver's reputation as one of wrestling's most dangerous moves and led to stricter safety protocols in the WWE. While filming Jackass #2, Johnny Knoxville attempted a motocross backflip that went horribly wrong when the bike crashed down handlebars first directly onto his crotch. Knoxville was immediately rushed to the hospital, where doctors discovered the trauma had torn his urethra and partially detached it from his bladder. For the next 3 years, he had to perform painful self-catheterization twice daily to keep the torn tissue from sealing shut. He later described the sensation of pushing a tube through the raw, unhealed tissue as like jamming a knife into an open wound every single day. The risk of infection was constant, and any mistake could have led to permanent urinary dysfunction or worse. In 1912, 4-year-old Bobby Dunbar vanished from his family's tent during a camping trip in Louisiana, sparking a frantic 8-month search. He was eventually found in Mississippi with another family who insisted that he was actually their son, Bruce Anderson. But sadly, the Andersons didn't have the money to fight this in court, so they lost custody of the child. The Dunbars took the boy home and raised him as their son Bobby Dunbar for the remainder of his life. Decades later in 2004, DNA testing confirmed that the boy they took from the Andersons was not Bobby Dunbar, as the real Bobby Dunbar's fate remains unknown to this day.